Hey everybody, this is Mr. Beckstrom, and as promised, I'm going to go over that problem in class on Monday that we did not have time to finish, and I'm going to do it a harder way than they did it in the book. So if you look in the book on page 504, example number 7, you'll see that they started with the right side, which made this quite a bit easier. But I want to do it the way that we try to do it in class because we can still do it that way. It's just it's a little bit harder. So try to follow me here and let me know if you have any questions. All right. So the first thing that we want to do is we just want to clean this up as much as possible. We're going to use the fact. Remember the Pythagorean identity. So sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x is equal to 1. We'll use that. And we're also going to use, if you divide everything here by sine squared of x, you'll get 1 plus cosine squared of x divided by sine squared of x is cotangent squared of x is equal to 1 over sine squared of x, which is cosecant squared of x. So we're going to be using the Pythagorean identity plus this variation of it in this problem here. So make sure that we know these and we can formulate these when we need to derive them. Excuse me. All right, so if we start with, well, first of all, let's simplify this. So 1 minus sine squared of x, well, if you just subtract, or sine squared of t, if you just subtract the sine squared of x from both sides, you'll get cosine squared of x is equal to 1 minus sine squared of x. So we can replace this top one here with, do that. We're going to need a lot of steps here. So cosine squared of t on the top. And then on the bottom, we know that cosecant is related to sine, and sine is an odd function. So we can change the angle from negative to positive, but we have to multiply the front of it by a negative, which will change that to a positive. So we have 1 plus cosecant of t, cosecant of t. And then this is equal to, same thing we're going to do here since it's an odd function. We can go ahead and change this to positive, but we have to multiply the front by a negative. So 1 minus sine of t all over, we could just leave that one the same. So again, if we start with the right, which is what the book does, it's a couple less steps, but we're gonna do this. We're gonna challenge ourselves and start with this side over here, and I mean the right side. Yep. All right. So if I start with this side over here, first thing I'm going to try to do is remember our end goal is to get this over here. So one strategy is that when we have 1 plus or 1 minus one of the trig functions, we can use that idea of a difference of squares where we multiply both the top and the bottom by the conjugate. And sometimes it'll give us some stuff that we can work with. So let's do that. So I'm going to have cosine squared of t, and we're multiplying the top by the conjugate of this. So that's 1 minus cosecant of t. And then on the bottom, we'll have a difference of squares. And remember, a plus b times a minus b is a squared minus b squared. So it will just be 1 squared, which is 1 minus cosecant squared of t. All right, so this is what I've got right now, which doesn't look too much like that, but let's see what we can do here. Let me give myself, okay, so I'm going to distribute this out. So this is going to be cosine squared of t, that's the cosine squared of t times the 1, minus this thing, so that'll just be cosine squared of t times cosecant of t. So that's what we'll get on the top. And on the bottom, we're going to use this thing over here. So notice that if I subtract cotangent squared of x and cosecant squared of x from both sides, I'm going to get 1 minus cosecant squared of x is equal to cotangent squared of x, right? And notice that, oops, this is going to equal to negative. So notice that, wait just a moment here, make sure that looks right. Notice that here on the bottom we have 1 minus cosecant squared of t. So that will be the same as negative cotangent squared, and I'll pull the negative out front here, negative cotangent squared of t. So that kind of helps. Now let's go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. Remember that cotangent squared of t is the same thing as cosine squared of t over sine squared of t. So we're just going to flip that. And then we're going to say cosine squared of t minus, this is the top. Remember, keep, flip, switch, something, I can't remember what that thing is, but it's when you're dividing fractions by fractions. Cosecant of t. And we are going to multiply, put this over 1. We're going to multiply that by the reciprocal, which is just the tangent squared of t, and I'm going to write that as sine squared of t over cosine squared of t. Cosine squared of t. All right, so now notice that this, well, let's distribute that out a little bit before I do that. So, and I'll write this, so this is negative cosine squared of t plus, because the negative times the plus, cosine squared of t, cosine squared of t times the cosecant of t. And on the bottom, we're just going to have this times, oh, and don't let me forget that sine squared of t on the top. So hold on just a moment here. Okay. Times, let me do this a little bit differently, because I think it'll make it a little bit more clear. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and distribute that with that. So this is going to be negative cosine squared of t times this, which is sine squared of t, and then this times this is a positive times that, so this is going to be plus cosine squared of t cosecant of t times sine squared of t, sine squared of t, all over this times this, which is cosine squared of t. And my pluses and my t's are mixing me up, so let's just try to work with it. But really I only have two terms here, right? Because there's only one plus up here, which is right there. So I can cross out cosine squared of t from all three of those terms there. And what this is going to give me is negative sine squared of t, because that got canceled out, plus, and then we're going to have just this over here, cosecant. Let's write cosecant in terms of sine here. So that's 1 over sine of t times sine squared of t. And there's nothing left on the bottom there. So what's going to happen here is this will cancel out with one of those. And I'm going to end up having sine of t minus sine squared of t, right? And because that's all that's left, I just flip those two things around. Now I'm going to pull out a sine of t, and I'm going to get 1 minus sine of t, right? Remember, I'm working towards that other side there. And finally, I can write sine of t as 1 over cosecant of t. So this is 1 minus sine of t all over cosecant of t. And a little green check mark there. If I go look back up here, that's what I had on the right. So a lot of stuff going on to do it that way. Like I said, there are multiple ways to do it. But if you did start off by doing the right side and then multiplied both sides by the conjugate of that, I believe that's what the book did, you'll get to this side much quicker. All right, guys. I know that was a difficult one. If there's any of the steps that you're having confusions with, please let me know. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. Thanks.